The sun was blazing over the quiet streets of downtown, people hustling past each other, oblivious to what was about to unfold. Manny Pacquiao walked calmly toward the corner cafe, his steps measured, his eyes scanning the crowd but never hurried. Nothing about him seemed threatening. No bodyguards. No entourage. Just a man in a simple shirt and jeans, moving through the ordinary chaos of the city as if he belonged to it. And yet, the city was about to witness something extraordinary. Out of nowhere, 2 police officers appeared, their badges glinting in the harsh sunlight. Their faces were stern, rigid, their hands twitching near their belts. Someone had reported suspicious behavior, or perhaps it was a miscommunication. It didn't matter. All that mattered in that moment was the raw, explosive collision of misunderstanding and authority. Before Manny could even react, one officer lunged forward, grabbing him roughly by the arm. Another slammed into his side with brute force. The sound of the impact echoed against the concrete walls, sharp and terrifying. Manny hit the ground with a heavy thud, the weight of the moment almost knocking the wind out of the people nearby. Shouts erupted from the small crowd that had begun to gather, some gasping, others recording on their phones, all frozen in disbelief. "Hey! What's going on?" a passerby shouted, but the words were swallowed in the chaos. The officers, rigid and unyielding, pushed Manny down further, his hands pressed against the rough asphalt. Dust kicked up around him, mixing with the tension in the air. His calm gaze never wavered, though. There was a quiet in his eyes, a composure that refused to break despite the shock, despite the unfairness of the moment. A woman in a nearby cafe dropped her coffee, frozen mid-sip. A little boy clutched his mother's hand, peering from behind her shoulder. Every single person watching knew instinctively that this was not a normal arrest. There was a tension in the air that seemed almost cinematic, the kind that made people hold their breath, waiting for something, anything, to happen next. The officers were shouting now, their voices sharp, commanding, unyielding. "Stay down! Hands where I can see them!" But Manny didn't flinch, didn't fight, didn't argue. His calmness was almost infuriating. The more the officers tried to assert control, the more the world seemed to slow around Manny. His breathing remained steady. His eyes locked on the lead officer, unafraid. And then, a small detail caught the crowd's attention. A glimpse of a badge clipped to his belt, partially hidden by his shirt. Nobody noticed at first, but the hint of authority beneath the ordinary man's calm demeanor began to ripple through the crowd. Whispers started to rise. "Wait, is that? No way, that can't be." The tension became unbearable. The officers froze mid-motion, their grip on Manny slackening ever so slightly. Their faces shifted from anger to confusion, their confidence cracking under an invisible weight. The world seemed to hold its breath. Every eye on the street was glued to Manny Pacquiao, the man who hadn't raised his voice, who hadn't thrown a punch, yet somehow, in a way that nobody could yet comprehend, held the room completely in his control. Seconds stretched into eternity. The dust hung in the sunlight, the murmurs of the crowd grew louder, and still, Manny remained on the ground, calm as a lake at dawn. And in that silence, heavy and electric, one thought ran through everyone's mind: what happens next will change everything. No one moved. No one spoke. And in that frozen moment, as the officers hesitated, the world seemed to pause, waiting for the truth to reveal itself. The street was buzzing with the usual midday chaos. Cars honked as they squeezed past one another, cyclists weaved between vehicles, and pedestrians hurried along the sidewalks, some on phones, others carrying bags or grabbing a quick bite from the street vendors. The air smelled faintly of exhaust mixed with fresh coffee from the corner cafe. A soft breeze rustled the leaves on the trees lining the street, but it did nothing to calm the tension that was slowly building, unnoticed by most passers-by. Manny Pacquiao stepped lightly onto the pavement, his presence understated yet commanding. He didn't rush, didn't glance around nervously. There was a rhythm to his steps, a calm confidence that seemed to radiate from him. No bodyguards flanked him. No entourage cleared the way. Just Manny, moving with the ease of someone completely at home in the chaos, yet aware of everything around him. Across the street, 2 police officers lingered near a patrol car, their sunglasses reflecting the sunlight. They leaned casually against the vehicle at first, exchanging smirks and whispered jokes. But as Manny approached, their demeanor shifted instantly. Arrogance replaced casual posture. Their body language screamed authority and entitlement. One twirled his baton with a flick of his wrist, clearly amused by the notion of asserting dominance over someone they assumed was just another pedestrian. The other adjusted his hat, chest puffed out, eyes narrowing in a subtle yet unmistakable display of superiority. As Manny drew closer, the officers straightened. Their casual postures vanished like mist in the morning sun. One of them muttered under his breath, loud enough for the nearby sidewalk cafe patrons to hear, "Let's see what he's up to. Doesn't look like he belongs here." The other chuckled, running a hand over the strap of his holstered weapon, the gesture more for intimidation than necessity. Every motion, every glance, was designed to make the approaching man feel small, out of place and powerless. Yet Manny didn't react to any of it. He continued walking with deliberate calmness, eyes steady, shoulders relaxed. There was no trace of panic or fear, only awareness. He scanned the crowd, nodding briefly at an elderly man helping a child tie his shoe. A vendor waved a friendly hello. Manny returned the gesture with a faint smile. This ordinary man, seemingly unassuming, walked through the street like a quiet force of nature, unshaken by the eyes on him, unbothered by the unseen judgments around him. The tension between him and the officers thickened with every step. The lead officer cleared his throat, a low, threatening sound, and called out sharply, "Hey! You there! Stop right there!" His voice cut through the usual street noise, drawing the attention of nearby pedestrians. Some turned to watch, eyebrows raised in curiosity, sensing that something was about to happen. Manny paused briefly, acknowledging the voice without haste, without anger. His calm presence seemed almost to mock the aggression in the officer's tone. "Good afternoon," he said simply, voice measured, polite, carrying neither threat nor submission. The officers exchanged a glance, their smirks faltering slightly as they struggled to reconcile their expected reaction with the unshakable composure of the man before them. Nearby, a small crowd began to gather, sensing the brewing tension. Phones discreetly lifted to record, whispers passed along the sidewalks. "Who is that? Why are the cops acting like this? Something's not right." Even the cafe patrons leaned forward, curiosity gripping them as they observed the scene. Everyone could feel the electricity in the air, the invisible tug between authority and calm resolve. The lead officer stepped forward, a little too close, chest forward, chin tilted in a silent challenge. "Identification," he barked, assuming the usual compliance of someone caught off guard. Manny didn't reach for a wallet, didn't search his pockets frantically. Instead, he simply looked at the officer, eyes steady, voice calm but firm. "I'm here for a simple errand. There's no reason for this to escalate." The officer's hand hovered near his radio, as if ready to call backup at any moment, yet something in Manny's calm gaze made him hesitate. The other officer mirrored the motion, brow furrowed, unsure whether they were witnessing a simple pedestrian or someone far more consequential. The air was thick with expectation, tension practically vibrating between them. Every bystander could sense that the next moments would define what kind of encounter this would be, chaos or lesson. And then, almost imperceptibly, Manny reached into his pocket, moving slowly, deliberately, never breaking eye contact. The small motion was enough to freeze the officers in place, just for a fraction of a second, as if their instincts whispered that this was no ordinary man. The moment hung suspended. Onlookers leaned closer, phones raised, hearts beating a little faster. And in that charged silence, Manny's calm presence contrasted starkly with the arrogance and aggression of the officers, a quiet storm poised to break. The moment stretched like a taut wire, and then it snapped. Without warning, one of the officers lunged forward, grabbing Manny by the arm with a roughness that sent a shock through the small crowd. "Hands behind your back now," he barked, his tone sharp, clipped, leaving no room for negotiation. Manny's eyes didn't flare. He didn't struggle. He simply allowed the motion, his calm composure making the officer's aggression look even more grotesque. "There's no need for this," Manny said quietly, his voice low but firm, carrying the weight of authority that belied his ordinary appearance. The second officer moved quickly to Manny's other side, slamming him against the patrol car. The metallic clang echoed across the street, drawing startled gasps from bystanders. "Don't fight us! Don't test us!" the officer snapped, his sunglasses hiding the flicker of uncertainty in his eyes. Manny remained still, his breathing steady, his shoulders squared. Even as they tried to push him to the ground, He didn't panic, didn't resist. The sheer calmness in his posture was unnerving, a quiet assertion of control that contrasted sharply with the officer's frantic aggression. A passerby stepped forward. "Hey, what's happening?" "He didn't do anything." But the words were ignored. The officers were so caught up in their assumption of authority that they couldn't hear reason. "Step back, citizen," one of the cops barked. "This doesn't concern you." As Manny hit the asphalt with a heavy thud, the impact caused a small cloud of dust to rise around him. His hands touched the ground lightly, almost reverently, as if nothing in this world could shake his balance. "Please, sir, just calm down," he said, more to the situation than to the men pinning him, his tone carrying neither fear nor anger, only quiet command. The crowd was silent now, the usual murmur of the street replaced by a tense hush. Phones were raised, lenses pointed at the unfolding scene, capturing every movement. Whispers spread. "Who is this man? Why are the cops acting like this? Something's not right." One officer shook his head, clearly frustrated by Manny's lack of resistance. "I said stay down." "What's wrong with you?" he shouted. His grip tightened, but it was like trying to grasp water. Manny's stillness refused to be controlled by brute force alone. The other officer leaned closer, face inches from Manny's, voice dripping with condescension. "You think you're clever, huh? You think you can walk around here and ignore the law?" Manny's eyes met his without flinching, and for a brief moment, the street seemed to pause. Every witness could see it, Manny's calm, unshakable presence towering over the bluster of authority. "You don't need to shout," Manny said simply. The words were quiet, but the weight behind them made the officer step back unconsciously. The other officer's face tightened, a flush of embarrassment crossing his cheeks as he realized something wasn't adding up. "Hands behind your back," the lead officer repeated, this time with less certainty. He glanced at his partner, whose hesitation mirrored his own. The aggression that had fueled their actions moments before was now mingled with confusion. How could one ordinary-looking man, with no resistance, no entourage, and no apparent force, command the attention and restraint of two trained officers? Manny's gaze swept the street slowly, acknowledging the whispers, the stares, the tension that had grown palpable. And yet, his eyes never left the officers. There was no fear, no panic, no hint of submission, only a quiet, unyielding authority that seemed to anchor the world around him. "Look, we don't want trouble," Manny said again, calm and measured. "Let's handle this properly." His voice was so even, so composed, that the aggression around him felt almost misplaced, a shadow against the light of his steady presence. For a moment, the officers froze mid-motion, caught between procedure and instinct, between ego and reality. Their hands hovered near their weapons, their stance defensive yet hesitant. Around them, the crowd shifted uneasily, sensing that something monumental was about to happen. Then, in a subtle motion, Manny reached toward his pocket. The officers stiffened, their grip on him faltering. The crowd leaned in, holding their breath. A small glint of metal appeared, partially hidden, a badge. Not just any badge, but one that radiated authority far beyond their assumptions, far beyond the arrogance that had fueled their actions. The weight of the moment pressed on everyone like a heavy silence. The officers' faces changed, from anger to disbelief, from dominance to hesitation. Every muscle in their bodies seemed to freeze. Even the air seemed to hold its breath, as if the world itself recognized the quiet power Manny Pacquiao carried. And there, on the asphalt, dust rising around him, Manny remained composed, his calm gaze holding the attention of everyone present. Not with force, not with anger, but with the undeniable presence of a man who was both ordinary and extraordinary, a living lesson in humility, authority, and restraint. The tension had reached its peak. The stage was set for the revelation that would leave everyone stunned, unsure of who held the real power and what lesson the day would deliver. The street seemed to hold its breath. The chaos of the moment, the harsh grip of the officers, the sharp commands, the sudden fall, had left a strange silence hanging over the scene. Pedestrians froze mid-step, their eyes fixed on Manny, who remained on the ground but exuded an almost magnetic calm. Even in the dust and tension, his posture was unshaken, shoulders squared, head held high, eyes steady and piercing. A woman clutching a handbag behind a nearby cafe table gasped audibly. Her coffee trembled in its cup as she whispered, Who is he?" A man filming on his phone muttered under his breath, "This isn't right. Something's wrong here." The whispers spread like wildfire through the small crowd. Each person added their voice, small and uncertain, building a symphony of disbelief. Phones rose across the street, recording every second. The shutters of cameras clicked in rapid succession, capturing Manny's serene demeanor, the tension in the officers' bodies, and the crowd's growing unease. People nudged each other, exchanging glances that carried a mix of fear and awe. "Look at him. He's not even scared," one teen whispered, voice trembling. "He's unshakable," another added. The officers, meanwhile, were visibly rattled. The lead officer's hand hovered near his radio, hesitation cracking the confidence he had worn like armor minutes before. The other officer fidgeted slightly, glancing at his partner, then back at Manny, uncertainty creeping into his movements. Their aggressive posture had softened, but neither fully understood why. All they knew was that this man, lying calmly on the ground, carried an authority that made their own assertiveness feel awkward and out of place. Manny slowly pushed himself up onto one knee, maintaining eye contact with the lead officer. His movements were deliberate, controlled, unhurried. Dust clung to his clothing, but he made no attempt to brush it off, as if the dirt itself was inconsequential compared to the lesson being silently conveyed. Every inch of his body language spoke volumes, composed, confident, unafraid, yet quietly commanding. A few onlookers in the back of the crowd leaned forward, whispering among themselves. He's handling them like he's in charge," one murmured. "But he's just one man," another replied, tension shaking her voice. The contradiction hung in the air, ordinary in appearance, extraordinary in presence. It was the kind of paradox that left bystanders unsure where to place their fear or respect. A street vendor who had been serving lunch leaned against his cart, arms crossed. He shook his head slowly. "I've never seen anything like this," he muttered. Even from his position a few feet away, he felt the shift in energy, the subtle but undeniable recognition that the man on the street had a quiet power, one that demanded attention without a single shout. Manny straightened fully, dust falling off his shoulder. His gaze swept across the street, taking in the whispers, the frozen phones, the shallow breaths of bystanders caught between fascination and fear. And still, he did not raise his voice. He didn't need to. Every subtle movement, every calm glance, communicated more authority than words ever could. The tension was almost unbearable. Pedestrians shifted uneasily, uncertain if they should step forward or stay back. Every moment stretched, suspended in the street's heavy air. "What's going to happen next?" someone whispered. Nobody spoke louder than a murmur. It seemed inappropriate to disrupt the silence Manny's presence had commanded. The lead officer's hands twitched near his belt, betraying his uncertainty. He had been certain moments ago, confident in his position of power, but that certainty had crumbled like dry sand. The other officer's jaw tightened, as if trying to hide the same realization. Both men seemed to sense something beyond their understanding, a quiet authority they couldn't fight or intimidate, emanating from the man they had just slammed to the ground. Manny adjusted his stance slightly, shifting his weight onto both feet. His posture was unassuming yet undeniably strong. His eyes never left the lead officer's face, sending a subtle unspoken message. "I am calm. I am composed. I am aware. And you are the one who has overstepped." Every bystander could see it, could feel it, and could not ignore it. Whispers escalated into soft murmurs across the crowd. Some people held their phones closer to capture the moment. Some stared, unable to move, mesmerized by the quiet tension. "Who is this guy?" a woman whispered. "Why aren't they doing anything?" The answer was clear to everyone in the street, though no one could yet articulate it. Manny wasn't just calm. He wasn't just unafraid. He carried authority that the officers had not anticipated, one that would soon be undeniable. The officers froze mid-step, unsure of their next move. Their previous aggression had melted into confusion, uncertainty, and a growing realization that this man was no ordinary citizen. They glanced at each other, then back at Manny, their posture rigid but hesitant, trapped between instinct and respect. For a long moment, the world seemed to pause. The hum of traffic, the clatter of distant construction, the chatter of the street, all faded into background noise. Only Manny remained in focus, standing tall, composed, unafraid, radiating calm control that drew every eye, every breath, every heartbeat. And in that suspended silence, the crowd held its collective breath, waiting for the revelation, the twist, the moment when the ordinary assumption would shatter and the truth of Manny Pacquiao's authority would finally be revealed. The tension in the street was almost unbearable, like the calm before a storm. Pedestrians leaned forward, phones raised, every eye locked on Manny Pacquiao. The officers' hands hovered uncertainly near their belts, their aggressive stance softened into hesitation. It was clear, this was no ordinary man. Something about him radiated authority, but the full truth had yet to reveal itself. Manny reached into his pocket slowly, deliberately, his movements calm and controlled. The crowd collectively held its breath, sensing the moment of revelation. From the folds of his shirt, he drew a polished badge, its metal gleaming under the harsh sunlight. The words were engraved clearly, "Police Chief." A stunned gasp rippled through the crowd. Phones wavered in midair as people struggled to capture the unbelievable scene. "No, that can't be," someone whispered. "Is he?" Another voice trailed off, disbelief written across their face. The lead officer froze, eyes widening in shock. The grip he had just used on Manny slackened instantly, and he stepped back a fraction, his jaw tightening. What? Chief," he stammered, unable to form the words fast enough. His partner mirrored the reaction, wide-eyed, speechless. The arrogance, the aggression, all of it evaporated in an instant. Manny held the badge high enough for everyone around to see, his calm demeanor never faltering. "I came here to handle a simple errand," he said quietly, voice steady, carrying the weight of authority without a hint of anger. "But I see we have some confusion about respect and protocol." His gaze swept the officers and the surrounding crowd, unflinching, composed, commanding. The lead officer swallowed hard, his chest rising and falling quickly. We didn't know, sir," he admitted, voice barely above a whisper. His partner shook his head, muttering, We didn't realize." The sudden shift from aggression to humility was palpable. Their previous confidence had crumbled, replaced by reverence for the quiet power Manny had just revealed. The crowd erupted into whispers and soft murmurs again, but this time laced with awe instead of fear. "He's the police chief," someone whispered, disbelief coloring every syllable. "I can't believe they just slammed him," another bystander muttered, shaking his head, "and he didn't even fight back. He didn't yell. He didn't panic. Incredible." Manny folded the badge and clipped it back to his belt, the gesture subtle yet commanding attention. "Authority is not about raising your voice," he said, glancing back at the two officers. "It's about control, respect, and understanding. I could have escalated this situation, but I chose not to." His calm presence, steady and unwavering, left a profound silence hanging over the street. The lead officer stepped forward slowly, a mix of apology and newfound respect in his posture. "Sir, we acted rashly. I'm truly sorry," he said, bowing his head slightly, unable to meet Manny's steady gaze fully. The other officer echoed the sentiment, trembling slightly as he added, "We didn't mean any disrespect, Chief. It won't happen again." Manny nodded once, acknowledging their words without a hint of anger or gloating. "Good," he said simply. "Respect isn't demanded, it's earned. And it's something you show even when you think no one is watching." His words carried across the crowd, reaching every pair of ears, every device recording the moment. Bystanders whispered among themselves, awed by the lesson they had just witnessed. A man recording on his phone shook his head, muttering, "I came here thinking I'd see some chaos, and instead I saw a masterclass in calm authority." Children stared wide-eyed, sensing the gravity of the moment even if they didn't fully understand it. Manny turned slowly, addressing the entire crowd now. "What you witnessed today is not about me," he said. "It's about how you treat others, even when you hold the power to act otherwise. Remember this moment." He paused, letting the weight of his words sink in. Then, with a small smile and an almost imperceptible nod, he added, "Now I have a question for all of you, and for these officers too." He gestured slightly toward the two men, still frozen with a mix of relief and respect. "If you were in this situation, what would you do, confront or apologize? Comment below. Let's see who understands true strength." The crowd began murmuring, phones raising to capture every word, every expression. People exchanged glances, some shaking their heads in disbelief, some smiling in admiration. The lesson was clear. Power without composure is fragile, but calm authority commands respect effortlessly. The officers, still standing frozen, slowly relaxed their stance, hands now resting naturally by their sides. They exchanged another glance, this time with understanding rather than tension. They had been shown a lesson they would never forget. Manny's eyes swept the crowd one last time, calm and assured. The street felt charged with energy, awe, and reflection. His presence lingered even as he stepped away, leaving behind a silence that spoke louder than any words, a silence of respect, humility, and authority fully realized. And as the phones continued to record, the whispers spread, and the lesson sank deep into the hearts of everyone present. One thought echoed through the crowd: true authority isn't given. It's proven. The street remained silent, as if holding its breath to witness the aftermath of what had just unfolded. The once aggressive officers now stood frozen, the adrenaline of confrontation replaced by a mixture of awe, shame, and disbelief. Their hands trembled slightly, fists unclenching as the reality of their actions hit them fully. They had misjudged the situation, misjudged the man, and now faced the undeniable truth: they had been wrong. The lead officer exhaled slowly, his chest rising and falling as he tried to regain composure. "Chief, we made a terrible mistake," he admitted, voice low and shaky. His partner mirrored the sentiment, bowing his head slightly. "Sir, I am sincerely sorry. We didn't know, we didn't realize." The words hung in the air, heavy with sincerity and regret. Manny Pacquiao remained calm, his presence steady, unshaken. He did not raise his voice. He did not scold or berate them. Instead, he took a slow, deliberate step forward, letting the gravity of his authority and composure speak for itself. "Apologies accepted," he said simply, his voice calm but commanding, carrying the weight of someone who had faced far greater challenges in far harsher circumstances. "But remember this: respect is not given because of position. It is shown to everyone, especially when you think no one is watching." The officers nodded, their expressions a mixture of humility and astonishment. They could feel the truth in his words, a lesson they would not forget. Their previous arrogance had evaporated entirely, replaced by an understanding of what it meant to wield authority responsibly, to act with humility even when power was in their hands. The crowd, still gathered along the street, watched silently. Some whispered among themselves, still recording the unfolding scene on their phones. Others just stared, eyes wide, absorbing the gravity of what had just occurred. Parents held their children a little closer, as if to silently impress upon them the lesson. Strength is calm, power is quiet, and respect is earned through character, not intimidation. Manny turned slowly to face the officers fully, his gaze steady and unwavering. "Your job is to serve, to protect, not to belittle," he continued. "Authority without understanding is weakness. Today you learned that the hard way. Let it be a lesson for the future." Every word was deliberate, yet delivered with the serenity of someone who knew that lessons stick far better when anger is absent and humility is present. Then Manny did something small but significant. He gestured toward the group of bystanders who had stepped back during the confrontation. "Please," he said, "check on these people. Make sure everyone is safe, that no one was hurt during the confusion." The officers, still shaking slightly, nodded. One of them stepped forward, a little more confidently now, offering a brief apology to a man whose phone had been knocked out of his hands. Another checked to ensure that no one had tripped or fallen in the chaos. The crowd began to murmur with relief, some even applauding softly. Manny's calm action, directing attention not toward himself, but to the well-being of others, reinforced the lesson in authority, respect, and leadership. This was not about pride, fame, or revenge. It was about integrity, responsibility, and the subtle power of doing the right thing even when wronged. The lead officer finally lifted his head fully, meeting Manny's gaze with renewed understanding. "Chief, thank you for showing us the right way. We'll do better. We'll remember this." His voice was steady now, no longer shaking, carrying genuine resolve. His partner echoed the sentiment, their prior tension replaced by determination to learn from their mistake. Manny gave a faint nod, a small smile crossing his lips, not of arrogance but of quiet satisfaction. "Good," he said. "Let today remind you that true strength isn't loud. It doesn't need to prove itself with force or intimidation. True strength is silent, steady, and rooted in respect, for yourself and for others. The bystanders began to disperse slowly, some whispering to friends about what they had just witnessed. Phones lowered, recordings saved, stories already forming in their minds. Yet the energy lingered, the lesson was etched into the street, into the minds of everyone who had seen it. Manny's presence remained long after he walked away, a quiet force that had transformed tension into understanding, arrogance into humility, and fear into respect. Before stepping off the curb and disappearing into the flow of the city, Manny paused briefly and addressed the crowd one last time. "Remember," he said, voice calm but carrying over the hum of traffic, "authority is not about the badge you wear. It's about the respect you show. And that is the real measure of power." As he walked away, the officers remained standing, a little taller now, a little wiser. The crowd, still in awe, exchanged glances, some shaking their heads, others nodding slowly. Phones buzzed with notifications as people shared what they had witnessed. And in the quiet aftermath, one truth was clear to everyone present. The lesson had been learned, the authority had been demonstrated, and the impact would be remembered far longer than the brief confrontation ever lasted. As Manny Pacquiao walked down the street, the city slowly returned to its usual rhythm. Cars resumed their honks, pedestrians continued their hurried steps, and the hum of daily life resumed. Yet, the moment that had just unfolded lingered in the air, a quiet echo of authority, respect, and humility that seemed to hang over every person present. The confrontation with the officers, brief yet intense, had left more than a mark on those who witnessed it. It had left a lesson, etched into memory. Respect, Manny's calm presence reminded everyone, is not something earned through force or fear. It is shown in every interaction, every choice, every moment where one has the power to act and the discipline to act rightly. The officers had learned it the hard way, but the lesson extended far beyond the asphalt of that street. Every bystander, every witness on their phones, every person whispering in awe to a friend had glimpsed the true meaning of authority, not the kind that shouts and intimidates, but the kind that stands quietly, composed, and unwavering. Even the youngest among the crowd seemed to understand the gravity of what they had seen. Children, eyes wide, clutched the hands of their parents, sensing the subtle power that comes from calmness and control. Teenagers whispered among themselves, replaying the moment in their minds, absorbing the quiet authority of a man who had been disrespected yet never lost his composure. Adults exchanged glances, some shaking their heads in disbelief, others nodding slowly in acknowledgement. Each person carried with them a fragment of the lesson. True power does not need to assert itself loudly, it asserts itself through integrity and respect. Manny paused for a brief moment, glancing back at the officers now standing, humbled, their confidence transformed into reflective awareness. No anger lingered in his eyes, no bitterness in his expression. He had not sought revenge, nor had he demanded submission. He had merely demonstrated the difference between force and authority, between arrogance and humility. And in that demonstration, he had given the officers, and the world, a powerful lesson they would not forget. He turned to the remaining crowd, his calm voice carrying over the distant hum of traffic and the occasional shout from a nearby street vendor. "Power without respect is meaningless," he said, words simple yet weighted with truth. "Humility is not weakness. Authority is not the badge you wear or the strength you display. True authority is recognized by the respect you show to others, even when you could assert your own will." A few murmurs of agreement passed through the crowd. Phones captured every word, every gesture, every subtle nuance of his presence. It was a lesson meant not only for the officers but for everyone who had witnessed the scene. Respect is universal, and the consequences of ignoring it can be immediate, even if unrecognized until it is revealed. Manny's small gesture earlier, ensuring bystanders were safe, checking on their well-being, reinforced the lesson in a way words alone never could. Authority is not about the size of your voice, the glare in your eyes, or the force of your actions. It is in your choices, your restraint, and your awareness of the world around you. In that quiet, deliberate care, Manny had shown that true strength is expressed not through dominance, but through responsibility and composure. As he walked further down the street, disappearing gradually into the flow of everyday life, the officers remained standing, humbled, reflecting on their actions. Their initial arrogance had been stripped away, replaced by a newfound understanding of the balance between power and respect. The lesson Manny had delivered would follow them for years, reminding them that even in positions of authority, Humility must guide action. The crowd dispersed slowly, some still whispering in disbelief, others shaking their heads in admiration. Stories of the event would travel far beyond this street, carried on social media, recounted to friends, shared with family. And with each retelling, the core message remained intact. Respect is powerful, humility is essential, and authority is to be wielded wisely. Manny paused one last time, raising his hand in a small wave, not for applause, not for recognition, but as a quiet acknowledgement of the lives he had touched that day. "Remember," he said softly, so only those closest could hear, yet the words felt like they could carry forever. "Your actions, your respect, your humility, these define you more than any title, any badge, any display of power ever could. And now, it's your turn. What would you do in a situation like this? Would you confront, or would you choose humility and understanding? Type respect in the comments if you agree that true strength lies in calm authority and humility. Share where you're watching from. Let's celebrate those who understand the quiet power of integrity and respect. For those who witnessed it, either in person or through their screens, the lesson was clear. The impact of calm authority can be far greater than force. Humility is not surrender. Strength is not loud. And respect, shown to all, can change not just a moment, but everyone present forever. Manny Pacquiao left the street that day as quietly as he had entered it, yet the lesson he delivered echoed far beyond the asphalt. Every whisper, every recording, every reflective gaze carried a single truth. Respect is earned, humility is power, and authority is not to be underestimated.